Okay. As I said, I'm a Chief Executive Officer around a jury here this evening to host this evening session. I'm just going to click the magic buttons behind the screen and leave it all to Sadie. So I'll hand over to you now.
Brilliant, thank you so much. So I hope everyone can see and hear me okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by sharing my screen and hopefully the audio as well, because I've got a wee presentation and some videos to share with you. So I'll start that and hope that the technology works for me. Okay, so hopefully you can all see the correct screen now. Brilliant. So yeah, my name is Sadie. I am the Hebridean Whale and Dolphin Trust's Education Officer. So I'm going to talk to you tonight about careers within the Hebridean Whale and Dolphin Trust, different roles that we have within the trust, and some opportunities for you to get involved as well. So just to, oh, there we go. Give you a quick overview. I'll talk for about 35 minutes or so before handing over to questions. So I'll introduce who the trust is for anyone who may not have heard about us before. I'll let you know what our work involves and yeah, what we do throughout the organisation. And then I'll give you an overview of the different roles within the trust. There are a few different roles, so I'm not going to be able to talk in depth about all of them. But what I will do is give you an overview and then talk a bit more in depth about our education and engagement roles and our research and conservation roles to give you a little bit of a flavour of what that all involves. Then I'll talk to you about the opportunities for volunteering or opportunities to gain experience in this field of work if it is something you would like to go into as a career or even just as an interest as a volunteering thing in the future. And then I'll hand over to you guys for questions. So to start off with, the Hebridean Whale and Dolphin Trust is a marine conservation charity. So we were established in 1994, so we've been around for a fair while. We're based in Tobermory on the Isle of Mull, which you can see on the map there. It's the little orange dot on that island. So we live in a wonderful part of the UK and of Scotland. It's a beautiful place surrounded by lots of different islands and loads of different marine animals. So our aim is for whales, dolphins and porpoises to be protected and valued throughout the Hebrides. And we have got an amazing array of different wildlife right on our doorstep, really, because of the different habitats across the west coast of Scotland, the different depths of ocean, the islands, the coasts, the deep sea, you know, the lochs, the sea lochs as well. That makes it a really diverse area for different species. So we actually have recorded 24 different species of cetacean, which is a whale, dolphin or a porpoise, on the west coast, which is a huge number, considering there's about 90 different species around the world. So it's a very large number. We do get 8 species that are more commonly seen. So I will admit those 24 species do include those that have either only been recorded once or have been recorded but they were actually dead. So unfortunately that's how scientists record their numbers. They will include those that have just washed up dead in the area. So although it is a large number, there are a fewer number that we actually see quite regularly, and 8 of them are quite common as well. So the area is a very important place for these animals. So to better protect them, we need to better understand them. And we do that through our research, which I'm going to talk to you a little bit about. We have 3 different segments of our work, which I'm going to talk you through. Research is the first one. Now, we have got our research vessel Silurian, which is in the picture here, a beautiful sailing yacht that we've had for 20 years now. We actually celebrated its 20-year anniversary in December, which was fantastic. And we carry out robust long-term monitoring programs on board Silurian. So we conduct scientific surveys across the Hebrides. So that orange box that I showed you earlier, that is our research area. So we only focus on the west coast around the Hebrides. And we will monitor what whales and dolphins and even basking sharks are in our waters in the summer months. So between April and October, we go out nearly every single week to monitor the seas. We've also started going out in the winter months as well, but this is very reliant on the weather, as I'm sure you can imagine. It's not always easy to get out there to monitor. So we do less monitoring in the winter, but we still try to do it throughout so that we can get a year-round picture of what's happening in our seas. The research that we do on board collects 3 different types of data. We collect visual, so we have people up on the mast watching out with their eyes and with binoculars, and we record everything that they see. We record acoustic monitoring, so this is the sound. So we will drag a hydrophone behind Silurian, recording constantly the soundscape of the ocean. And this is for things that we may not see. So we might not see the animals, but we would hear the animals. And it also lets us know if there's any sound pollution taking place in the waters as well. And then we also do photo ID. So any species that are good to ID through their dorsal fin, so things like bottlenose dolphins, minke whales, killer whales, we'll take photographs of them to try and see if we can work out who these individuals are. We wouldn't be able to do this work without our amazing team of volunteers. So on every research trip, we get a team of 6 volunteers. They're paying volunteers, they pay to come on board, and they pretty much get trained up to be marine scientists throughout that week. And they will do everything that we're doing. They'll take part in absolutely every aspect of the trip, from you know, keeping the boat clean and cooking for people, to collecting all of the data, working on the science computer, being up and watching out for the animals, and even having a go at sailing as well. So they get involved in everything. We hold the largest database of its kind in the UK, so it is a pretty significant and important job that we're doing. So alongside Silurian, we also have Whale Track. This is our citizen science database, where basically anyone can send in sightings of whales, dolphins, porpoises, basking sharks, to let us know that they're there. So they can either do this as casual reports, so they've just walked along and they've suddenly seen a fin coming out of the water and they've recorded it, or they can put effort in. So it's called effort-based data, when they will record their excursions, if they're out on a ferry or a boat, or they actually purposefully go and sit on a headland and do a watch from land for a designated amount of time. So this effort-based data is crucial because it allows us to do more analysis. It lets us look at relative abundance of species in the area, distribution of species, presence and absence. It gives us a lot more data to work with. All the data that we collect is shared with other organisations, with research students, maybe doing PhDs, and with government. So it feeds into the national database. And this plays a huge part in helping decision makers make decisions, and hopefully the right choices in making these areas protected for these species, and just making the right steps forward to ensure that you know, we are protecting the environment that they live in. The other aspect of our work is education. So we have an education programme where our aim is to bring marine science to life and champion the vital habitat of the Hebridean seas. So we encourage outdoor and hands-on learning. We have a programme which incorporates things like school visits, so going out to schools and taking things like bones and different artefacts to the classes to get them really inspired about the sea. We take them out to headlands to try and spot for whales and dolphins and record what they see on Whale Track. And we also get them out on Silurian as well. So we try and get as many schools out on board Silurian as we can each year to introduce them to the research that we do and sort of give them a taste of what being a marine scientist is like, which a lot of these kids, it's probably one of the only times they're going to be able to do this while they're at school, and it inspires them to kind of continue that on. We've had people come back and do volunteering with us and then actually go off and study things like marine science. So it's a really good opportunity for them. We also train boat operators as part of our education programme. So we deliver the WISE scheme, which is to train boat operators to be responsible around marine wildlife so that they can limit and minimise any unintentional disturbance as much as possible to, again, try and protect the UK wildlife. And then finally, we've got our community engagement work. So we work with communities across the different islands and across the mainland on the West Coast as well to engage locals, but also tourists in the marine environment all around them. So we work on doing activities, we give talks, we go to events that maybe they're hosting, we host our own events. And we also developed the Whale Trail, which is a series of land-based watching sites across the Hebrides, which promotes responsible tourism. And it just helps people see whales and dolphins, because the more people see them, the more they're going to care about them and want to help them. We also have our visitor centre in Tobermory on the Isle of Mull. So this is kind of the public face of the trust. Locals and visitors can come in, learn a little bit more about the work that we do, and also get involved in some of the activities such as local walks and talks, and learn a little bit more about how they can get involved using Whale Track and submitting their sightings. So I'm going to talk to you about the roles within the trust. So if it is something that you're interested in kind of moving into in the future, there are lots of different ways that you can actually get into it. We've got a wide range of roles within the trust that if we didn't have everyone doing their bit, we wouldn't be able to achieve our goal of protecting these animals. So every role is crucial. And one of the first things I do want to try and emphasize is if you are interested in getting into this field, there are different routes that you can go down. You don't always have to go down the most obvious route or the route that everyone else is taking. So you can look at getting into this in your own way. And I will talk a little bit more about the advice I would give in a little while. But what I'll do is I'm briefly going to go through some of our more office-based roles before going into our boat team, and then I'll move on to the education and the conservation side of things. So firstly, we have our director, Alison. She is in charge of basically ensuring that the trust is meeting its legal standards and obligations. So making sure we're doing everything right so that we can keep doing our jobs. She works on things like strategy, working out how we could maybe future-proof the charity, what we could do to challenge ourselves to make more of a difference. She does fundraising, so she basically makes sure that we have the money to be able to do our job and deliver our charitable objectives. And she also does the HR, so she'll recruit for new staff and again just make sure everyone's happy in their jobs. So without Alison finding funds and keeping us all right, we would probably really struggle to survive. So that is a really crucial role. So anyone interested in things like management, fundraising, strategy, this is actually a really good role for you to have a look into getting into. We've then got our finance officer, Karen. She is vital in ensuring that we're paying all of our suppliers, that we're paying our staff and keeping our staff happy. And she also balances the books. She makes sure that we've got the funds in the correct places to be able to pay for all of our outputs. So anyone that likes maths or likes money and is really good at finance, that would be a way into this field of work as well. Our communications manager, Morven, is really crucial in reaching a wide and broad audience. So without our supporters base, we are a charity. We rely on public donations, on sponsorships, and without people supporting us and knowing what we do, we would really struggle. So having someone who shares all of the stories, shares the work that we do, and gives the wildlife a voice is really crucial. So Morven will do things like social media. So if you're into your social media, or she'll talk with newspapers or radio stations, she'll do all the press releases, and she works on kind of working out how best we can get our voice heard to tell people what we are doing and get our messages and our stories out there. So yeah, that is a really interesting role if you are interested in getting in touch with other people, in spreading messages in social media. That's a really good role to look into. And then last of the management side of things, we've got our centre and communities manager, Shelley. So she is involved in running the public face of the charity, the visitor centre. So she'll make sure that it's running smoothly, that everyone's happy, that we've got stock in the shop. And she also manages the engagement team to make sure that we're delivering all of the events and education projects that we said we would deliver. So onto our boat team. So this potentially might be something you're really keen on. So the Silurian boat team is made up of quite a diverse group of people. We actually get quite a lot of contract crew in. who come in whenever they're available. So they may not do the whole season, they might just do weeks here and there that they're able to do. And without the boat team, we wouldn't actually be able to do the science. We're not sailors. We don't, we wouldn't be able to sail the boat. We're there for the science. So without these guys, we actually wouldn't be able to do our research. So they are an absolutely crucial part of the team. So first up, we've got our boat manager, Charlie. So he is a paid member of the Trust's team. So he will manage everything to do with Silurian. He'll make sure that she's safe and she's fit to sail. She'll book any sort of work that needs doing on her. He'll do a lot of the work himself as well. That's one of his jobs over the winter, is to just sort of make sure that she's safe and sound, keeps her clean and functioning. He also recruits other members of the boat team. So he'll be in charge of getting other skippers or first mates on board. And these might be people who have been working with the Trust for years, so know exactly what to do under a research sail trip, or it might be people who have never done this sort of thing before. So he would need to sort of talk to them and train them up a wee bit to make sure they understand the objectives of it. I think one of the key things about sailing for the research side of things, from what skippers and first mates have said to me in the past, is it is very different to just sailing, to actually going out, enjoying the sailing and focusing on the sailing. When you're on Silurian, you're focusing on the science. You have to do it in a very disciplined way. There's a protocol that we have to follow. So they do find that it's a bit of a learning curve going from sailing to actually you have to go at a certain speed and a straight line and not necessarily where the sea takes you, I think one of my previous skippers said. So yeah, it can also be a bit of a challenge, a fun challenge for them. So the skipper and the first mate, they are in charge of Silurian when they are the ones on board. So well, like I say, they are contract crew. We'll have different people throughout the season, and they will make sure that all of the science team and the volunteers are happy and safe and doing everything correctly to make sure that nothing, like no one falls in. We don't want that. And they'll also make sure that Silurian is safe throughout the trip as well, because anything can happen throughout a week or 12 days. So they're always keeping check on Silurian, and they look after everyone on board. So they are very good at cooking. That is a very good skill that they have. We do eat a lot when we're on Silurian because we need to keep our energies up. So yeah, they'll be looking after us and making sure everyone's well fed. And then finally, we have contract mechanics. So that's one of the things that Charlie will be in charge of, contracting any mechanics that we need in to just give Silurian a little bit of TLC. Brilliant. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus a little bit more on our education and engagement roles now. Part of that will actually be playing a pre-recorded interview from one of my colleagues that I asked her to record just the other day. I wanted you to get more than just my experience, my advice. I wanted you to get a bit of a range of people's thoughts on how you could maybe move into this career, or things you could do if you're just interested in doing it even as a volunteer. So I will talk to you about how I got into my role, and then I'll have Caroline, who's one of my colleagues, talk to you. And then I've also got someone from the science team who's done a recording to talk to you as well. So our engagement team is managed by Shelley, like I said, our Centre and Communities Manager, and she will manage myself. So I'm the Education Officer. Caroline, who's the Community Engagement Officer, who'll tell you a bit more about her role in a second. And then Siobhan is our exhibitions officer. So her role is working in the visitor centre. She'll get the interpretation all sorted out in there. She runs the events, she does talks, she runs the walks. She manages our team of seasonal volunteers, and she also works in the shop. So she's got quite a fun role engaging with the locals and the visitors to Tobermory. So I'm going to move on to my role and talk you through pretty much these questions. I've tried to get everyone to answer similar questions so that you get a nice idea of everyone's jobs. So I'm going to talk to you about what my job is and what it entails, my favourite part of the job, what qualifications and training I needed for this job, and then any advice that I would give you if you wanted to move into this aspect of marine conservation. So yeah, as I've said, I'm the education officer, so it's actually quite a diverse role. It allows me to do a little bit of everything, actually, and considering the name, it suggests that I just do education. I feel like I actually get to do a lot more than that under the umbrella of education. So obviously, one of my key things is to educate and inspire people about the amazing marine wildlife in our seas. So we want people to care about this, and if they care about it, they're going to protect it. So that's kind of my key role. So I work in schools delivering digital education. So I'll have schools coming on and I'll do a short talk and then I'll do a wee Q&A with them. As you can imagine, it's quite hard to get to schools when you live on an island. So sometimes digital is actually the way forward. I also do in-person school visits. So I'll, like I said earlier, take bones and skulls and things in for the children to actually hold and experience and take them out to try and look for whales and dolphins. I get the children on board. So these are some pictures of our floating classroom. So Solarian, as well as being a research boat, she's our floating classroom as well, where we get children out on board and they get to experience every aspect of it. So they get to look for marine wildlife with some binoculars, they get to hoist the sail, they get to choose a bed if they were to live on board, and they get to listen to the acoustics monitoring as well. One of the most exciting parts of my role is I also get to become a science officer 4 weeks a year, which I never thought I would say, being my background in education. So as the science officer, I will lead 3 research trips a year with teenagers and with university students. So this is me sailing on one of those trips, which again, never thought would happen. So it's a really cool way into this world is through the education side, because I actually get to do so much more. Another part of my role is Whale Track. So I manage the community sightings network of Whale Track. So I get to see all of the amazing things people are sending in to us. I get to write blogs and articles and give talks about these animals that people are seeing. And I get to train up people to be able to survey for whales and dolphins, record the data, send it in to us, and contribute to our science. So it's a really exciting role. So my favourite part of the job, I probably have to admit, is being on board Solarian. It was a challenge for me. I don't really have much experience on boats, and I've never been called a science officer before because I don't really have a science background. So being on board and teaching people how to collect scientific data and, you know, seeing their enthusiasm and letting them see animals for the first time sometimes is a lot of fun. So that's probably my favorite part, is actually getting out on Solarian and teaching people how to be a marine scientist. Qualification wise is quite an interesting one, actually. So when I looked back at my job description in order to do this talk, it was actually essential for me to have a degree or a vocational in a science or environmental discipline. I don't have that, so I thought that was actually really interesting. I didn't study science at uni. I don't have any form of environmental discipline. I did maybe a few free online courses to show I was interested, but I wouldn't say anything to really tick that box. What I did have, though, was what they had in their desirable section, which was a teaching qualification. So I am a qualified teacher and I've worked in schools for 10 years. So I had the experience that they needed, maybe not necessarily the degree that they wanted. So having that experience, I think, has definitely helped. So I think that would also move on to, I think, a bit of the advice I would give you is, even if you don't have everything that they're looking for, if you have enough, apply, because you might actually be the most qualified person that applies. You don't know who else is applying and what they have. So even if you're missing something that they say is essential, it's something you could potentially learn on the job, and it's worth still applying and giving it a go. Because yeah, when I looked at applying, I didn't have that essential field, but I still went for it, hoping that what I did have would be enough. So that's definitely the first bit of advice that I would give. The other thing that I needed was experience on boats. So I do have very limited experience on boats. I had done a few trips on ribs, but I'd never done any overnight any overnight work on boats. So again, that was very new to me, and it was a gap that I didn't have. But again, you can be trained up in that, and you know, with that training you can then deliver it quite confidently. So finally, advice. I've given you one bit of advice already, is I would probably give a little bit more. I'll try not to give too much because I'd be here for a while. But I would say to consider what your interests are. You don't have to take the most obvious route into it or the one that everyone else is taking. It is quite a competitive field. So I think the best thing to do is to try and stand out. So my way in was through education. I'm now doing things I never thought I would do with just having an education background. I'm doing more science stuff, which I don't have a background in. So consider your interest. Is it communications, media, social? You know, maybe get into it that way. Is it education, engagement? Go into it. Is it sailing? Get into it that way. You know, think about what it is you're interested in and the route that you can take and what you can offer. Because yeah, there's a lot of people going into the field, and you do need to stand out, and you need to enjoy it as well. So go with your interests, think about what it is you would enjoy, and go from there. The other thing I would say is, and you know, don't always feel you have to go to university. You might want to go to university, and that might be what you need, because you may, for the science side of things, you might need to go to university. But if you're not academic, and that's not the route you want to take, that's fine. Again, consider how else you can get into the field. Volunteering is a good way into it. My colleague Caroline will talk a bit more about that in a second, but volunteering does actually, showing you've got that experience actually does play a huge role, because I've got a friend who never went to university. She didn't study any of this. She just did a few volunteering projects and proved she could do the job. And she's now a conservation officer. And that's usually a role that you need a degree in. So yeah, experience can actually account for a lot. So that would probably be my few bits of advice. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to stop talking for a minute so you'll have a break from my voice, and I'm going to play a recording that Caroline did for us to talk about her role. So she's the community engagement officer, and she's going to talk through the similar questions to what I just did, and she'll be talking for about 3 minutes. So hopefully you find it useful and you can see and hear it okay.
Sound's not playing this time. Bear with me.
Right, it may have been, I put myself on mute hoping that would help, but maybe that, can you hear it now?
Low impact.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll keep myself so you can hear, and I'll just try not to talk.
No problem. Thank you.
My name's Caroline, and I'm the Community Engagement Officer for the Hebridean Whale and Dolphin Trust. My role involves leading on the Whale Trail project, which is a network of 33 sites all around the Hebrides, which encourages accessible, low-impact land-based watching. We are incredibly lucky here in the Hebrides to be home to so many amazing species of wildlife, and I get the joy of working with local communities, conservation charities, businesses and individuals in order to raise awareness and celebrate the species that we see here on the West Coast. It wasn't essential for me to have a degree to get into this role. It is desired or preferred that I had a scientific or environmental discipline degree, and I do have a degree in geography. But it was essential for me to have English and maths, GCSE, National 5 or equivalent, and a minimum of 2 A-levels or higher. It was essential for me to have a full UK driver's licence as well. I found a lot of my volunteering experience ticked a lot of the other boxes, and I think that had a huge part to play in terms of qualifications and training. There's so many aspects of my job that I absolutely love. I love working with people, I love working with communities, I love sharing my passion and kind of ultimately making other people fall in love with the marine environment and the species that we see here. I think people protect what they love and they only love what they know. So being a part of raising awareness and celebrating what incredible species we see here on the coast. There's people here on the Isle of Mull that didn't even know that we had whales and dolphins in our waters around here. So kind of sharing that and being a part of it is really, really special. And as well, being able to see these species, we're out on the headlands and spending a huge amount of time with eyes on the sea. And yeah, it never gets old watching the fins break the surface. It's a really, really special part of my role. I think the main bit of advice I can give is not to rush. Spend the time to figure out exactly what it is that you'd like to do. When I began volunteering years ago, I had absolutely no idea I would end up in the marine conservation world, but it was just through volunteering for conservation charities, organisations, groups, and kind of going with where the wind took me and taking advantage of different opportunities that I kind of ended up where I am today. So take that time. I think volunteering can be extremely hard work, but in the same breath, it is incredibly rewarding, and it gives you that real life experience to figure out exactly what it is you love to do.
Brilliant. So yeah, I thank Caroline for putting that together. Hopefully it's given you some different advice to what I was able to give you. So I'm going to move on to our science research and conservation team. It's really vital that to get change, to get legislation change or to get protected areas, that we have the evidence to prove that these animals are here, that there may be some challenges that they're facing and things that we think would help them to protect them and to make them thrive in their habitat. And to do that, we have a fantastic team of scientists behind us. So our research and conservation team consists of our science and conservation manager, Lauren. She uses our data to work on research projects and research papers to answer questions that will help enact change. So she helps us better understand what's happening, and she basically interprets the data that we're collecting so that we can understand what it's telling us. She will also work with PhD students. She'll be liaising with organisations who may then be talking to governments. So yeah, she really does kind of make it so that the data we collect is understandable to people and that we can really learn from it and make a difference. We've then got Jenny. She's our fieldwork and research manager. So she manages everything to do with the science on board Silurian. So she actually spends the majority of her time on Silurian. She'll be training up the volunteers. She'll be out collecting the data herself. She's pretty much out throughout the summer season, except for maybe the odd few weeks. And then in the winter, she'll be analysing that data. She'll be looking at what it is they've collected. She'll be tidying it up, making sure it's all accurate and trying to work out what it's telling us. And that will then be handed over to Lauren, like I say, to use in research papers and to answer these important questions. We also get relief science officers. So these are people who we get on board to deliver the research trips when Jenny needs some time on dry land, because it can be quite hard to spend 6 months of your life just on a boat. So she will need some time off to come onto land, see family, just kind of get her land legs again. So when she does that, we get in some relief science officers to deliver pretty much the exact same role, training up our volunteers and collecting that data. And then these are our volunteers. This is actually a team trip that I delivered last year, which was fantastic. So every trip we get 6 citizen scientists on board to get trained up to be able to do the survey protocol and collect the data for us. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a little while and how you could get involved. So from our science team, I've actually interviewed Becky. She used to do Jenny's role. So we've had a few changes in the trust recently, and I'd had this recording, which was a really good one that Becky put together. So I wanted to share this one with you about how she got into the science officer role, just to give you, if you're interested in this side of things, a little bit of advice from her. So again, I'm going to stop talking and I'll hand over to Becky to answer some similar questions to what we have already.
Becky. I'm the Science Officer at the Hebridean Whale and Dolphin Trust, and I'm here to answer some of your questions. So my main job is to lead our expeditions on board our research vessel Silurian, where we go out and survey the west coast of Scotland and collect data of international importance on the whales, dolphins and porpoises in our waters. And we use that data to conserve and protect those animals. So I don't really have a typical day, I guess, so that's quite difficult to answer, but one of the reasons why I love my job is it's so varied. When I'm out on the boat, the typical day starts with getting the anchor up at about 7, getting breakfast on the table, and then I train people to become citizen scientists, so teach them about the whales and dolphins in our waters and how we record them. So we start surveying out on the west coast, so we spend the day at sea, looking out for cetaceans and taking pictures when we see them. So a lot of photo ID work I do as well. And then in the evenings, we lower our anchor, I analyse the data, and we also get the opportunity to go to some of the most remote places on the west coast of Scotland and explore some spectacular islands. In the winter, most of my time is spent then analysing the data that we've collected. So I've spent a lot of time at my desk over the last couple of months looking through the data and trying to figure out what's going on out there. So yeah, lots of variety in my job. For this particular job now, I was required to have a postgraduate degree, so that's a master's or a PhD. So I actually have a master's of research that I got from the University of Plymouth, where I did applied marine science. But you don't just have to go down that route. If you have sort of years of experience in the sector as well, that's another way to get into it. So going and doing a master's or a PhD isn't always the best way to get into science. So the best thing about my job, why I love it so much, is because I get to live here on the west coast of Scotland and I get to sail in our waters every year. I get to record and look and try and find out things about the cetaceans here, and I also get to show other people the wildlife in our waters as well. So the best part of the job for me is seeing people's face when they see their first whale or dolphin, and teaching people about them when they don't actually know that they might be here. You know, people down where I'm from wouldn't know how spectacular the west coast of Scotland is. I guess my top advice would be not to worry if you're not, you know, an expert in all areas of STEM. You know, not many people are, and you definitely don't need to be. So if you have a particular area that you're really wanting to go into, or a subject that you're passionate about, really concentrate on that and make sure that you get the qualifications you need to get to the next level, but don't worry about it if you're not grasping certain subjects. You know, even when you get into the highest levels, when you're professing at a university, you know, they won't be experts in every field in STEM. It's all about asking each other for advice. So yeah, ask for help and just go with what you're passionate about, and that'll see you through. So thanks for listening to me talk all about my job and my career in STEM. Good luck to you all, and yeah, I hope you get to where you need to be in the future. I want to be in the future.
Brilliant. So I hope you found that helpful, the science sort of side of our work and careers that you can go into. So just before I finish, I'm going to talk to you about some opportunities that we have that could give you some experience, give you a taste of what it might be like, see if you're interested in it, or give you that kind of like step up into the career if you needed that experience to get a foot in the door, really. So our first thing is our research expedition. So you could join us on a research expedition once you turn 16. So the youngest you can be to join a research expedition is 16. We run teen trips twice a year for 16 and 17-year-olds, and then once you become 18, you would join an adult group. So I'm just going to play this video while I talk. I'm just going to mute it so that I can talk. So our research trips last between 7 and 10 days, and you travel across the Hebrides, collecting the data on the whales, dolphins, porpoises, basking sharks, pretty much anything that you see, we would record. And you're trained up to be part of the team. So you would get involved in everything that the adults would on their trips, and everything that we as a science team would be doing, you would also be doing. So it is paid. You do have to pay to do it, to cover your board on the boat and to cover food costs and things. But it's an incredible experience. You're really getting kind of thrown in to do everything. So you would get trained up in the survey protocols, in species ID, in identifying different birds and boats, in doing the acoustic monitoring work. So you'd do all aspects of the science data collection. You would also get a chance to do the sailing. You'd get a chance to cook on board. If you've never cooked on board a research yacht, you'd get a chance to do that. And then all of the fun stuff that we get to do in the evenings. We get to take shore visits to amazing sites like Becky was explaining. We play games, we socialise. So it is a lot of fun. It's a really good experience. It is hard work. We do long days, but it is really rewarding. So that is one opportunity that we offer. I think this year's trips are all full, but if you're turning 16, have a look at next year's trips when we get them up. We'll hopefully get those up on our website soon. So if you're interested, have a wee look at our website and see what it entails, and you can have a look at potentially applying one day. We also have our residential volunteer programs. So this provides you some good work experience in the sector. We provide long and shorter term. So they're all a few months long. Some of them may be 6 months, some of them may only be 3 months. But we try to be accommodating to the different opportunities, different availabilities of people. Not everyone can do a 6-month volunteering program. So we have some shorter ones as well. So for these, we recruit every year a small team of volunteers who come and live on Mull, which is an experience in itself. And you spend a few months of your summer supporting every aspect of the trust. So you would be working under the engagement team. So you'd be working in the visitor centre. You'd be trained up to deliver the walks, the talks, to run children's clubs. You'll help with the education side of things. You'll help with the science by doing some verification. And you also get to go out on one of the research trips as well. So you get that experience from the time that you spend with us as well. So again, it's a really fun opportunity. Not something that everyone can do because it is a long period of time to volunteer. But if you are able to do it, it is something to look into, to just sort of get that experience. Like we've all kind of said, you don't necessarily need to get the degree or to be academic. If you can show you've done the practical side of the job and show you can do it and got that experience, that may really help. And then finally, we've got, you can help us with reporting. So if you are based in Scotland, or if you ever visit Scotland, then you can use Whale Track and become part of our Whale Track community, and send in the sightings of any whales and dolphins that you have. So this can be casual sightings, or it could be that you actually do a dedicated excursion. If you're ever on a ferry, or if you're ever on a headland and want to sit and have a wee watch out, you can do a watch from land to send us your information. And that's showing as well, this is another volunteer aspect, and it's showing a bit of experience with biological recording. So one of the things I needed for my job was to have experience with biological recording, at least 1 year's experience. And I used to volunteer to do similar things to this, just go out and watch the sea for 10 minutes and record down what I saw. So I was able to put that down as my biological recording experience. So even just doing things like this, if you do it enough and for a long period of time, you could maybe put that down as some experience that you have. So there we go. That's me. I've sort of shared as much as I can with you here. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to pop them down, and I'll try and get through as many of them as possible. Hopefully I'll be able to answer them. If not, then I will go away and ask the team we all have different experience, so they might be able to answer them better than me. But yeah, I'll hand over to you guys for any questions.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. That was really, really informative, and really good. It was a nice flashback for me sailing along the west coast. It was really nice. We'll just see if we've got any questions. Folks, if you want to pop them in the Q&A section or into the chat function, you're more than welcome to, and then we can read them out. One question was, will the MSSC provide bursaries for cadets to attend the research expeditions? Don't know whether they will. It may be something that you could inquire into with the Marine Society and Sea Cadets. They do often have bursaries along with things like Trinity House and ASTO and that kind of thing. Sometimes they have bursaries that are available for this. So it's worth looking into. I don't know the honest answer. I can definitely ask that question and get that email to you. Is there anything available for under 16s?
That's a good question. So we don't have any kind of like official volunteering for under 16s. We do, so all of our talks that we do, so we do at the moment a series of winter webinars, and you know, under 16s are welcome to join those to kind of gain knowledge and understanding of what's happening in the marine world, ask questions of the experts as well. So we do get a few really enthusiastic under 16-year-olds coming to those. You do have to be accompanied by an adult, but we do get under 16s coming to those and asking the experts some quite interesting questions. So, you know, have a look at the things that we offer digitally. For local under 16s on the island, we do offer things like conservation clubs where they can come and learn a bit more and actually take a bit of action. So one of the things that, you know, even in your own area potentially that you could do is we're encouraging the kids themselves to run their own kind of conservation. Well, it is basically a club, but where they take action to protect the marine environment. There's a really good one up in Ullapool called the Ullapool Sea Savers. That's someone to really look into. The kids there are amazing. They run their own group and they do all these different campaigns to try and protect the marine environment, educating the adults. They know more than the adults sometimes. So that's something I would encourage if you are really keen to maybe look into making your own group up that will actually run campaigns to make the area safer and more protected for these animals.
Brilliant, thank you, that's great. Another one was, what's it like returning to land after so long on a boat?
That's a really good question. So the longest I've been on a boat for is 10 days. That's my longest trip. Thankfully, we do manage to get off on occasion for land-based visits, but they usually only last half an hour. So, and if the weather's not good, you might be stuck on the boat for several days without actually touching dry land. It's a bit wobbly, I would say. My legs sometimes are a bit wobbly once coming on dry land. I sway a little bit, and sleeping on a boat is a really interesting experience as well. When I end up coming back and sleeping in my own bed, I'm swaying, and yeah, it's quite fun, but it takes a wee bit of getting used to. Having not had much experience on boats anyway, when I first went on boats, it was it took a bit of getting used to actually get my stomach used to it as well. So yeah, it's definitely something I would suggest if you have the opportunity. Experience living on a boat for a few days. It's pretty cool.
Brilliant, thank you. Another one is there any possibility that more than 2 expeditions for 16 to 17-year-olds can happen?
So more than 2 a year. Oh, that's a good question. I think, to be honest, they used to run 3, but I think because of the capacity for Solarium, we only have 1 boat, and also the third one was kind of ran near the end of the season when the weather wasn't as great, so people don't overly enjoy it as much, and we don't get as much of the research done because of the weather conditions. So I think they put it back down to 2 more in the summer months where it's a bit nicer for everybody. So at the moment, I would probably say no, it will probably just be the 2 that we run, but we do try and run them at a time where all schools in the UK will have some holiday. It's in the summer holidays, so we know that the English summer holidays and the Scottish summer holidays don't always combine, so we actually look at the whole holiday dates and try and find the weeks where they're both on holiday. So we try and give as many people the option to come as possible. So like I said, I'm pretty sure this year's ones are fully booked, but I might be wrong. There might be 1 or 2 places left. Have a look on the website. But we will be putting dates up, I think, in hopefully the next month. If we're on the ball, we should be putting the dates up for next year. So have a look, because the teen trips it does take a good year for them to be fully booked. So there will be places to have a look at.
Brilliant, thank you. Are there any ways, this is a really good question, are there any ways that we could protect marine life at home?
Very good question. Absolutely, yes. So some of the things that I suggest probably always sound a little bit isn't always the answer I guess people want, but it is those things like reducing your waste. So there is a lot of marine litter on beaches and in the ocean. One of the things we record on Solarian is litter, and thankfully we don't come across much of it, but we have actually got a photograph of a Risso's dolphin with a plastic bag wrapped around its dorsal fin. So just reducing your own waste will make a difference. These animals do have plastic pollutants in their bodies from ingesting it, from the fish that they're ingesting it. So things like that. And I don't always just mean recycling. That is obviously great, but actually saying no to things that you don't need, saying no to stuff that actually you could do without. So things like that. Also, you know, we are all aware that there is a climate emergency going on, so things like reducing your own energy use as well. So if you're really into watching TV or playing games, maybe limit yourself to an hour a day instead of all evening. Go out and play in the lovely snowy weather that we have at the minute. Things like that. Not, you know, walking instead of if you're driving. But one of the key things I would say is young people have a huge voice. They really do. They are making a huge impact on in the marine world especially. So using your voice to tell people what is going on out there, what the challenges are, and what we need to do to fix it. Adults will listen. So I mean, I think we've all seen that there's been a huge uptake of young people using their voices to try and get change. They care. You guys care. So use your voice, you know, tell people what the problem is and what we need to do to fix it, and keep telling them until they listen.
Brilliant, thank you. And again, great question. So another question was, do any of the SCC vessels go up to this area? If they do they help with spotting marine life and reporting it back? Yes, the sea cadet vessels do go up there quite often. We've got 2 Rustler yachts, along with the Rather Power vessels and Royalist, all of which do a stint on the west coast. They all go up there. The yachts in particular do 6 weeks on the west coast, and they go from Largs up to Oban. They spend a lot of time in and out of Tobermory. They spend a lot of time in and out kind of sailing along the Mull. They do spend a lot of time up there. I was a permanent mate on board many years ago, and we used to get to see dolphins and whales all the time, which was really good. So there's definitely sightings, and you're right, that would be probably really good to kind of link the offshore element up with yourselves, and then perhaps maybe, you know, help with the recordings of those sightings and those sorts of things that they get to experience. So yeah, that would be really good, I think.
That would be fantastic. Like I say, one of the things in my job is to actually train people up to use whale track. So I am absolutely open to organising a training to use the excursion mode on whale track, so you can record effort-based data while you're on board. So yeah, if you're interested in that, please do just send me an email and we can arrange a date for training.
Yeah, brilliant. That'd be really good. So I'll pass that back and feed that on, because that'd be really good. There's also lots of units based along that kind of element of the coast, which, you know, there's cadets that are out all the time, you know, with their friends on the beach, headlands and that kind of stuff. So they're bound to see, you know, lots of things that they can help with those sightings and stuff. So
that would be
absolutely
amazing. Please do, like, anyone that is interested that's out on the water, like, get in touch and I can do a digital training, or potentially even come in person to show you how to use whale track. That would be wonderful.
Brilliant. Yeah, perfect. Well done, thank you. And another one was, what can we do at school to raise awareness to get more people involved in helping?
Really good question. So you can do things like, so some schools have, again, groups. They have the environmental groups, or they have climate groups, or they have sort of specific areas that maybe different year groups focus on to sort of learn a bit about. So One of the things that I actually looked at in my previous job was doing a kind of series of activities where you learn about different aspects of maybe some of the challenges that marine life are facing, and then actually putting on public events. So actually you as pupils putting on events for the public to teach them and raise awareness of these things, because like I say, they actually will listen to you. So you could do things like that. You could also, if there's anything that you find in your school that you feel might be contributing to the problem, so maybe they're being quite wasteful. I know I used to be a teacher. I used to laminate so much. I think back and I can't believe it. But you know, even being like, you know, talking to your teacher, do you need to laminate that? Do we need to keep that in plastic? You know, thinking about ways that they can limit their waste as well. So yeah, I think projects where you're presenting to the public, running events, you've got a big audience, you've got family, you've got people who, you know, if you're friends with, you've got the local community. I think people would go to that, maybe even go into fairs that are already running and taking an environmental stall with you. Yeah, I would say try things like that.
Brilliant, perfect. I think that concludes all the questions. I'd just like to say huge thank you to yourself, Sadie, for your time this evening, and for, you know, kind of spreading the awareness and giving us all the opportunity to see what you guys do. It's been really valuable, I think, for everyone that's been on the call this evening. And I'll definitely pass on the keenness to engage offshore with yourself as well, and see what we can do there. So brilliant. Thank you so much for your time. And if everyone else is happy, if there are any other questions kind of that you think of over this evening, please feel free to email them to the webinar email address that you all kind of signed up to, and we'll see what we can do to get in contact and liaise. But brilliant. Thank you very much for your time, everyone, and hope you have a lovely rest of your evening.
Brilliant. Thank you.